Hello everyone, my name is Gayatri Fukon. I welcome you to this massive open online course session. In this video, we will be discussing a very important topic, rural development programs in India. Rural development has been a central pillar of India's post-independence policy agenda because a very large share of the population lived in villages and dependent on agriculture and related activities for their livelihoods. From the first 5-year plan onwards, the Indian state explicitly embraced the task of building infrastructure, expanding agricultural productivity, extending credit, and improving living standards in rural areas. Over time, rural development came to mean not just increased agricultural output, but a complex set of interventions such as public works, asset transfer programs, social safety nets, and investments in human development, which are designed to reduce vulnerability and expand opportunities for the rural poor. With marketization, technological changes, and politicization of the masses, the policies of rural development have opened up the rural communities, which are now confronted with new opportunities as well as risks. The main objectives of rural development programs in India has been poverty alleviation, increase agricultural production, generate employment, develop infrastructure, increase access to credit, improve nutrition and health, promote education, women empowerment, decentralization of planning, provision for basic amenities, promotion of equity, improve connectivity, provide insurance, etc. Now let's talk about the ideas behind the ideas of rural development programs in India. The policy choices made in rural development reflect a mixture of developmental economics, administrative capacity, and political strategy. There was a strong belief among planners that investments in irrigation, seeds, rural routes, and electricity would generate the productivity gains necessary to stimulate rural incomes. Simultaneously, the political discourse after independence emphasized redistribution and targeted poverty alleviation as a basis for legitimacy, which increasingly shaped program design. Two broad strands of policy thinking can be identified. One, the favored top-down modernization through public investment and technology, and another that favored integrated multi-sectoral approaches aimed at directly improving the incomes and assets of poor households. The integrated rural development programs was an emblem of the latter strand, while later right-based instruments like the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act represented a different idea that social protection and minimum entitlements should be legally guaranteed rather than offered as discretionary benefit. State-led rural development in India effectively began after 1947 with the inauguration of the planning process and the 5-year plans. India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru wanted to transform the village social and economic structure by using modern technologies and changing agrarian relations. Community Development Program launched in 1952 was the first organized rural development effort after independence. It aimed to develop the social and economic conditions of villages through participation from people. The program focused on 6-point approaches: agriculture, irrigation, animal husbandry, communication, education, and health. However, it failed due to lack of funds and trained workers. In the 1950s and 1960s, the state prioritized irrigation, land reform in theory, rural credit, and agricultural research to modernize farming techniques. The Green Revolution of late 1960s and early 1970s dramatically increased grain production in certain regions, changing the economic landscape for many farmers but also highlighting regional inequalities. The 1970s saw a stronger rhetorical commitment to poverty reduction, and in 1971, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi launched the populist slogan Garibi Hatao, which translated into policies aimed at alleviating rural poverty. The program was discontinued with the changes in government. However, it was revised in 1982 after the coming of Congress government in the center. By the late 1970s and through the 1980s, the state introduced targeted anti-poverty schemes such as the Integrated Rural Development Program, also known as IRDP. This program was launched by the center in March 1976 as a major instrument of government to alleviate poverty by enabling selected families to cross the poverty line in the given time frame by taking up self-employment in various activities like agriculture, horticulture, animal husbandry, weaving and handicrafts, and services and business activities. Training rural youth for self-employment was launched in 1979 to provide technical skills to rural youth between 18 to 35 years living below the poverty lines. These schemes tried to enable them to seek employment in fields of agriculture, industry, services, and business activities. This scheme gave priorities to youth belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and ex-servicemen, and one-third seats were reserved for women. Food for Work program was introduced in 1977 by the then Janata government with the objective of provide employment to the unemployed or underemployed village persons during the slack season. The works undertaken were flood protection, maintenance of existing roads, construction of new link roads, improvement of irrigation facilities, construction of school buildings, health center and panchayat ghars, etc. National Rural Employment Program is a redesigned program of Food for Work program planned for creating additional opportunities in the rural areas with the help of surplus food grains. It was started in 1980 as part of the 6th five-year plan. Later on, this program was merged with Jawahar Rozgar Yojana. Jawahar Rozgar Yojana came into existence in April 1989. Under this scheme, it was expected to provide at least one member of each poor family belonging to below poverty line and employment for 50 to 100 days in a year at a work near his or her residence. About 30% of the jobs under this program were reserved for women. This scheme was implemented through village panchayats. Antyodaya Yojana was first initiated by the government of Rajasthan on 2nd October 1977 for special assistance to persons living below poverty line. It was later unpicked by the then Janata government at the center in 1978 and later by other states. The emergency period between 1975 and 1977 produced administrative centralization and controversial governance measures that left deep political scars. The backlash against the emergency influenced subsequent policy debates and electoral politics. By the late 1980s, India faced mounting fiscal deficit and external vulnerabilities, which were intensified by global shocks and a decline in foreign exchange reserves. The situation culminated in the severe balance of payments crisis of 1991, when reserves fell to low levels and the government sought assistance from the International Monetary Fund. This external crisis combined with domestic fiscal pressures created the conditions for the 1991 economic reforms that shifted India's macroeconomic orientation and the space available for expansive public programs. Employment and income support have been central to India's rural policy toolbox. One of the earliest large-scale anti-poverty measures at the household level was the Integrated Rural Development Program, which aimed to provide subsidized credit, productive assets, and training to poor families so they could sustain self-employment. IRDP and similar schemes were designed to create micro-enterprises and raise the asset base for poor households. But they faced difficulties including underfunding, administrative complexity, and capture by local elites. Over time, critics noted that asset transfer alone did not guarantee market access, technical support, or sustained incomes. This limitation contributed to the search for alternative models, culminating in the introduction of the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in 2005. This act shifted the emphasis from one-time asset transfer to a statutory guarantee of wage employment by rural households, offering up to 100 days of work per household in a year and thereby providing a predictable source of income as well as the creation of durable rural assets. The Act seeks to provide employment opportunities to the working people in order to fulfill their fundamental right to live life with dignity. It highlights the significance of basic right to work. Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana National Rural Livelihood Mission was launched in 2011 by the Ministry of Rural Development. It is also known as Ajivika. This scheme aims at empowering women's self-help model across the country. This scheme adopts a demand-driven approach, enabling the states to formulate their own state-specific poverty reduction action plans. This scheme focuses on self-help group promotion, capacity building, and infrastructure support. Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana. This scheme is part of National Livelihood Mission. This scheme is a skill training and placement program of the Ministry of Rural Development. It aims to provide better career opportunities for the rural youth by providing options to increase the income of rural families. It was launched on 25th September 2014. Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana was launched in 2001 with objective of providing better employment opportunities to the poor. It also aims to provide food to people in areas who live below the poverty line with purpose of improving their nutrition levels. Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan is a centrally sponsored program that focuses on school education through an integrated approach to ensure inclusive, equitable, and quality education for all children, especially rural, tribal, and disadvantaged groups. Rural housing and water supply have long been recognized as foundational elements of rural welfare because shelter and safe water directly affect health, dignity, and the ability of families to pursue productive work. Schemes such as the Indira Awas Yojana 1985, later known as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin 2016, provided targeted support for constructing basic dwellings for the rural poor, and later programs emphasized women ownership and improved sanitary facilities. Water supply programs evolved from focusing on village hand pumps and basic drinking water to broader watershed management and irrigation projects that consider both domestic and agricultural needs. Jal Jeevan Mission Har Ghar Jal 2019 aims to provide tap water connection to every rural household. It aims to promote community ownership and sustainable water management. National Rural Drinking Water Program, a centrally sponsored scheme, is being implemented to ensure provision of safe and adequate drinking water to all uncovered, partially covered, and quality affected habitations in the rural areas of the country. Sanitation lagged behind other indicators for decades. However, focused campaigns in the 2010s accelerated coverage, showing that when political priority and programmatic focus align, rapid improvements are possible. Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin focuses on behavior and gender-sensitive sanitation. It aims at open defecation-free India. Rural electrification and road connectivity are instrumental for development because they lower transaction cost, enable agricultural mechanization, and open opportunities for non-farm income. Early rural electrification efforts prioritize agricultural uses such as irrigation, pumps, but household connections and reliability became an increasingly important goal as the benefits of electricity extended into education, health, and small-scale industries. Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana 2017 seeks to ensure universal household electrification by providing last-mile productivity. Rural road programs, particularly the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, institutionalized the objective of providing connectivity to unconnected habitations as part of poverty reduction strategy. This scheme was launched by Pradhan Mantri Atal Bihari Vajpayee on 25th December 2000. It is funded by both state and central government after the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission report. According to latest figure made available by state governments under this scheme, about 1.67 lakh unconnected habitations are eligible for coverage under the program. This involves construction of about 3.71 lakh kilometers of roads for new connectivity and 3.68 lakh kilometers under upgradation. Bharat Nirman Yojana was launched in 2005 for building infrastructure and basic amenities in rural areas. It comprises of 6 components: rural housing, rural roads, electrification and rural telephony, etc. Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana was launched in 1st May 2016 to distribute 50 million LPG connections to women of below poverty line. Antyodaya Anna Yojana was launched in 2000 by the former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Under this scheme, food grains are provided to around 2 crore people of below poverty line at subsidized rates. National Social Assistance Program was launched on August 15 in 1995 with the aim of achieving the objective of directive principles. This centrally sponsored scheme provides financial help to different vulnerable segments of the society like widows, elderly, people with disability in form of pensions. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is a national mission for financial inclusion to ensure access to financial services. It was launched on August 28, 2014. The implementation and governance of rural development programs in India involves a multi-institutional framework. Ministry of Rural Development plays a central role in policy formulation, resource allocation, monitoring implementation, and interministerial coordination. Panchayati Raj institutions serve as the main implementing bodies at the grassroots level by preparing village-level plans, identifying beneficiaries, supervising implementations, conducting social audits, and ensuring accountability. Banks and financial institutions provide credit linkage, financial inclusion, financing self-help groups, and subsidy-linked loans under rural schemes. NGOs and civil society organizations assist in community mobilization, capacity building, awareness creation, and independent evaluation. Decentralized planning is a core feature of rural development governance. It emphasizes bottom-up planning through Gram Sabhas and Panchayati Raj institutions so that development programs can reflect local needs, priorities, and resource conditions. Evaluating the success of rural programs requires looking at diverse indicators, many of which are captured in the census and in national surveys. Over the decades since independence, there have been steady and measurable improvements in literacy rates, household electrification, permanent housing, and access to some form of drinking water. Poverty headcount ratios have declined substantially over the long run, though not uniformly across states or social groups. In some states, aggressive investment in agriculture and social services produced faster gains, while lagging states showed slower improvement. Infrastructure programs improved market access through roads and electrification and contributed to rural non-farm employment in many regions. Rights-based programs such as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act offered a predictable safety net for millions of rural households and have been credited with reducing seasonal distress and improving bargaining power of rural laborers. However, the census also revealed persistent gaps. Sanitation and clean water access remain incomplete into the later decades. Female literacy lagged behind male literacy in older cohorts, and occupational diversification away from agriculture was uneven. Despite the notable gains, rural programs suffered important limitations. A recurring problem was leakage and poor targeting. Benefits often failed to reach the most marginalized due to administrative inefficiency, corruption, and local elite capture. Small asset transfer schemes produced one-off benefits without guaranteeing sustained income because recipients often lacked market access, extension services, or follow-up credit. Moreover, dependence on agriculture remained high in many places, leaving large sections vulnerable to monsoon variability, commodity price shocks, and land fragmentation. Regional, caste, and gender inequalities persisted. Scheduled castes and scheduled tribes often experienced worse outcomes, and women's land rights and secure access to assets remain limited in many contexts. Many of the funds allocated for rural programs are siphoned off due to corruption and mismanagement. Only a small portion reaches to actual beneficiaries on the ground. There is also a problem of inadequate monitoring and evaluation of the schemes. Rural development in India is a story of mixed success, institutional learning, and changing political economy. Over decades, the country recorded substantial reduction in poverty and improvements in education, housing, and basic infrastructure. Yet, many challenges remain, including deep inequalities, agrarian distress, and environmental stressors. The 1991 reforms altered the fiscal and institutional context for rural programs, but did not eliminate the state's responsibility for social protection. Going forward, the most promising approaches combine hard infrastructure and market-enabling investments with right-based protections and robust local governance. Policymakers must invest in climate-resilient agriculture, strengthen rural non-farm employment opportunities, improve targeting and transparency, and continue to develop social entitlements that protect the most vulnerable. Only a balanced strategy that integrates investments, rights, markets, and local institutions can deliver sustained, inclusive progress for rural India. With this, I conclude my session. I hope this video helped you gain clarity and deeper understanding on the topic. Thank you.